Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. Last week we started in the book of Daniel. We talked about how Daniel purposed in his heart. He made a decision that he was going to do what's right. And then I kind of gave a little bit of a teaser toward the end about interpreting dreams. Today in Daniel chapter 2, we're going to talk about a dream that Daniel interpreted. And boys and girls, I better not get ahead of myself. Should I, Peter? You're just going to have to listen, boys and girls. Chapter 2, verse 1, and in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Okay, boys and girls, the idea that he's dreaming, and it startles him, and it scares him, and he tosses, and he turns, and he can't sleep peacefully. Sleep is just going away from him. Well, this is a problem, okay? The king, the leader, needs to get some rest. He needs to get some sleep. So in verse number 2, it says, Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. He's like, okay, all you smart people, you magicians, you sorcerers, okay, I had this dream and it bothered me. Okay, so they're there. They're like, all right, tell us the dream. Nebuchadnezzar goes, I can't. I don't remember the dream. You have to come up with the dream and interpret the dream. And the people are there going, how are we supposed to be able to interpret this dream? How are we going to, we don't even know what the dream is. We can't figure out the meaning. I don't know about you boys and girls, but sometimes when I have really weird dreams, I kind of try to think back like where they came from, and it's usually just a bunch of events that happened during the day that kind of smashed together funny. But if you don't know what you dreamed, it'd be really hard for somebody else to interpret it. Well, Nebuchadnezzar actually gets very mad, very upset, and he says, if you guys can't figure it out, you will be destroyed. You will be killed for not being able to interpret this dream. Verse number 5 tells us that the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. So he says, you better figure it out, or I'm going to cut you in pieces and turn your houses into a dunghill. Well, boys and girls, if they can't figure it out, what good does that do him to have them dead? Doesn't really do them any good. But he's angry, okay? He's not being rational. He is angry. He's upset, and he wants to know why he's being robbed of his sleep, okay? Some of you have probably gotten upset before simply just because you were tired. Now, we still make the choice to get upset, and that's not an excuse for it. But you probably realize by now that the more tired you are, the more easily you get upset. The king says, you got to figure this out. And he actually includes all the wise men in what would be the punishment. So he sends the captain of the guard to get Daniel and Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. He says, bring them all here. They all need to be killed or destroyed if no one can interpret my dream. So the captain of the guard goes, he gets them, and Daniel's like, wait a minute, hold on. What is going on here? Why is the king so upset? So Daniel asked that they be able to give some time. Give us some time here. Let's figure this out. Give us an opportunity, basically, to pray to God and ask. Well, Daniel's friends take time to pray, to ask God for help. Let's read verse 17. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. So after Daniel finds out what's going on, he goes home to those men and he says, we need to seek God's mercies. We need to pray. Well, boys and girls, do you think God heard them? I mean, they're in a far-off country. They're not in their homeland. Yeah, God does hear them. And that night, Daniel's sleeping, and he dreams a dream, and all of a sudden he realizes he knows the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, and he knows the interpretation of it. Not because Daniel's the wisest man, but because God gave him the vision. And throughout the story of Daniel, the book of Daniel, we're going to find that they constantly give the credit back to God, that God's the one who gave the wisdom, that God's the one who told them what the vision meant. Verse number 19, Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. And then it goes on, verses 20 to 23, and Daniel is praising God for giving him this wisdom, praising God for what he's done for him. So the next day, Daniel goes to Arioch, who is the captain of the guard who'd come to capture them before, and he says, "Take me to the king. I have figured it out." So he takes him to the king. He tells the king what the dream was, and Nebuchadnezzar's like, yes, that was it. It's coming back to me. That's what it was. And then he gives him the interpretation of it. So in verse 31, we'll read real quick what the dream was. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. Okay, so he sees this statue. It talks about how it's made of gold and silver, and so it's precious metals down to what's not so precious. And then this great stone comes, rolls it, smashes it to smithereens. Okay, so he tells him this dream, and Nebuchadnezzar's like, yeah, that's the dream, but what does it mean? Well, it takes him about 10 verses or 11 verses to explain what it means. The interpretation is in verse 36 through 45. But he starts off with telling him, said, this is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven have given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. So again, he gives the honor and glory back to God. King Nebuchadnezzar, you only have this power because God gave it to you. He goes on to tell Nebuchadnezzar that basically he represents the head of gold, the finest, well, that later ends up getting into Nebuchadnezzar's head, and we will find out about that in chapter 3 next week. But he goes on to tell him what the different parts of it mean. Coming to the end, verse 45, for as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof. I apologize, guys. We're going to back up one verse at 44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So the other parts of the body referred to different kingdoms, and where I read a verse late there, but verse 44, the last kingdom, that stone that was coming and was making that statue into smithereens, that was going to be God's kingdom. That was going to be his, and God will eventually rule and reign with an earthly kingdom. Well, Nebuchadnezzar, verse 46, then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded that he should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. Verse 47, the king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods, and a Lord of lords, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldest reveal this secret. And he gives Daniel a very powerful position. But boys and girls, at least in different small parts of Nebuchadnezzar's life, he recognizes who God is and gives God credit. We're going to study, though, there's definitely parts of Nebuchadnezzar's life where he does not honor God the way he should. We're going to get into one of those stories next week. But at this point in his life where we are leaving off, he sees the power of God in just being able to interpret dreams. So, as we look at Daniel and his friends who are in a foreign country doing what's right, God is trustworthy in all circumstances. Daniel and his friends were facing death if they couldn't come up with the interpretation, and yet God was still in control. Daniel had trusted God in all of life's circumstances. God is trustworthy, and we can trust him too, boys and girls. God just isn't a God of the Bible. He is the God of the Bible, but he's not just the God of that time period. He's the God in our lives as well, if you let him be, boys and girls. See you next week.